Well, hey guys, if you are looking to improve the look of wrinkles underneath the eyes, you need to watch this video because we're going to talk about a type of under eye wrinkle that the eye cream companies are not telling you about. Maybe they aren't aware that these exist, but they're actually pretty common. Chances are you are aware of the fact that with age, wrinkles and fine lines appear around the eyes, crow's feet, little fine lines underneath the eyes. They're a common age-related cosmetic concern that people are always seeking either products or specific treatments to improve the appearance of. But there is another type of wrinkle that happens underneath the eye that has nothing to do with aging. It's called the Dennie-Morgan fold. What the heck are these? Horizontal creases under the eyes and extend outward just underneath the lower eyelid margin. You can have one of these or multiple, and they are actually a sign of an underlying skin condition called atopic dermatitis. Atopic dermatitis, commonly referred to as eczema, is a common and chronic skin condition. The thing about these Dennie-Morgan folds, however, in contrast to other eyelid wrinkles, is that they actually appear at a very young age. They're related to the eczema. These can appear in young children with eczema actually shortly after birth, when eczema first starts to appear, because eczema in young children is actually quite common on the face, as opposed to age-related wrinkles which are acquired well with aging. While these are usually retained throughout the individual's lifetime, they become a lot more prominent, more obvious when the atopic dermatitis is flaring. If you are not aware, atopic dermatitis, it's a type of eczema and it's a chronic skin condition. It comes and goes and it flares with certain triggers like environmental exposure, changes in the weather, stress, getting sick or run down. For a lot of people, it starts in early childhood and it can kind of burn out once you get into your adolescence and your young adulthood, but it may reappear again, especially when you're under stress. And people with eczema are a lot more prone to irritation from things that come in contact with the skin, especially around the eyelids, because the skin there is much thinner than, say, the rest of your face. And because of this, it allows for more penetration of irritating ingredients that might not bother you on other body sites. And people with eczema, they have an underlying barrier problem. Their skin barrier is not as tight. It's not as good at keeping the skin hydrated and keeping irritating things from entering. And so the eyelid area is a very vulnerable site for people with eczema for a lot of irritation. Dennie-Morgan folds are not only associated with eczema, which is the skin manifestation of atopic dermatitis, but a lot of people with atopic dermatitis suffer with seasonal allergies, chronic rhinitis, and sinusitis. Chronic sinusitis actually can lead to problems with efficient drainage of fluid from the veins underneath the eyes. You get pooling there, and this can lead to tissue swelling that leads to the formation of these horizontal creases under the eye known as Dennie-Morgan folds, and also is associated with prominent dark under eye circles. So Dennie-Morgan folds and dark under eye circles, they can go hand in hand in people who have eczema, and again, it can appear from a very young age, and it is a clue that the child may have atopic dermatitis. What is with the name Dennie-Morgan? Who is Dennie? Who is Morgan? Dr. Dennie was actually a very prominent dermatologist in Kansas City, Missouri. He was very prominent in dermatology, and he taught students interested in dermatology, young resident doctors, clued them in early on that identifying these prominent horizontal under eye creases is a clue for atopic dermatitis. His colleague, Dr. Morgan, also of Kansas City, Missouri, decided to write this up, and that is when the name Dennie-Morgan fold was coined. Dr. Morgan wrote up a teaching brief in 1948 called A Suggestive Sign of Allergy, where he described these prominent horizontal folds originally identified by Dr. Dennie, and together they are why it is named the Dennie-Morgan fold. So how exactly do these prominent horizontal under eye creases differ from under eye wrinkles that are related to aging? Well, under eye wrinkles related to the aging process have to do with repetitive motion over time and loss of support in the underlying dermis, namely through loss of collagen. Now, of course, we have age-related losses of collagen, and then sun exposure accelerates damage of collagen. Ultimately, that contributes to the formation of wrinkles and fine lines, as well as other lifestyle factors like smoking. Poor diet can accelerate the onset of the visible signs of aging, including wrinkles around or underneath the eyes. With Dennie-Morgan folds, however, there is some degree of collagen destruction going on, and that, however, is not related to aging or environmental exposures, but rather it is secondary to chronic inflammation from the underlying eczema. That chronic inflammation and skin irritation leads to breakdown of the collagen. You also get tissue swelling, and again, the skin there is quite thin, so that tissue swelling becomes more obvious, and you get these prominent creases. That chronic inflammation and irritation also contributes to accumulation of fluid under the eyes, and you get these prominent swollen grooves and creases that ultimately lead to the formation of the Dennie-Morgan fold, or folds, because again, you can have more than one. With normal age-related changes around the eyes and the appearance of wrinkles, you tend to start seeing wrinkles around the eyes maybe in your early 30s, depending on your overall lifestyle. And as you get into your wiser years, well, they become more obvious, you develop more of them, or more of them are noticeable. However, with the Dennie-Morgan folds, they appear from a very young age. They actually become more prominent whenever the eczema flares. If somebody had atopic dermatitis as a child with prominent Dennie-Morgan folds, the atopic dermatitis became well controlled, sort of burnt out, no longer was active, well, the Dennie-Morgan folds, they can become less obvious. So they do have the potential to improve, though they don't really go away completely. Now, as we get into our wiser years and with age, our skin barrier function does decline a bit. We don't make as many of the protective lipids known as ceramides. We're more prone to water loss, and as a result, we're more prone to irritants getting into the skin and irritation. But with Dennie-Morgan folds in patients who have atopic dermatitis, they have at baseline a problem with barrier function. It's not acquired as a result of the aging process. It is natural to their skin. Their skin is very sensitive often and prone to irritation, not because of age-related changes in barrier function, but because they have an impaired barrier at baseline, making their eyelids more prone to irritation, water loss, dryness, itch, all of those symptoms of a skin flare of atopic dermatitis. Patients who have atopic dermatitis, because they have a problem with the skin barrier, their skin is a lot more vulnerable to irritation from things that come in contact with the skin, and they are also more predisposed to developing allergies to things that come in contact with the skin. During a flare of the atopic dermatitis, especially around the eyelids, the body is more likely to see things that it decides it doesn't like and develop an allergy to those things. The immune system will decide, hey, we're not going to tolerate this ingredient for whatever reason anymore. And because of that, patients who have atopic dermatitis, they are actually more likely to develop allergies to things that come in contact with the skin. And then anytime they come in contact with those allergens, whether it be in skincare products or shampoos, hair care products, well, the body is going to fight back and they're going to develop an area of rash anywhere where that ingredient comes in contact. That's known as allergic contact dermatitis, and it's pretty common in people who have atopic dermatitis. They are at greater risk for developing this. So their underlying atopic dermatitis may be pretty well controlled, but they've developed an allergy to something. It's going to flare up a dermatitis around their eyelids anytime they come in contact there with said allergen. So that's another reason for worsening of the Dennie-Morgan folds, or making them more obvious and more prominent. How do you actually treat Dennie-Morgan folds then? The focus has to be on controlling the underlying atopic dermatitis, because as that flares, these are going to become more obvious. As the fluid accumulates under the eye, you're going to get tissue swelling. That's going to make those prominent grooves in that sulcus, with the fold being more clearly delineated. It's very important for you to realize that, because if you've had prominent under eye wrinkles your whole life, this is definitely something that bears paying attention to. You can chase after all the anti-aging ingredients on the market, but they're not actually going to address the root cause of this particular type of wrinkle. How do you get good control of atopic dermatitis? It varies from patient to patient. Avoiding triggers is key. Common triggers are things like dust mites, pollens, pet dander, changes in the weather that make the air dry, like in the wintertime, excessive bathing, use of harsh soaps and detergents, especially to the delicate skin of the eyelid, and contact with irritating ingredients, whether that be exfoliants that come in contact with the eyelid skin haphazardly. This can all aggravate eyelid eczema. I have a video as a side note on eyelid dermatitis where I go over a lot of these issues. Things that you may not even think about could be aggravating irritation around your eyelids and further contributing to these horizontal creases and grooves. Now, if you see your dermatologist, which I encourage you to, they may suspect that you have developed an allergy to something. They may need to do something something called patch testing to figure out if you are now allergic to an ingredient that is driving this process. Patch testing is a bit of an involved process. It involves putting suspected allergens in little wells on your back, and you go home with that, and then you come back to the office at 48 and 72 hours. They remove the patches and look to see if you have a localized allergic skin reaction there. And then they can begin to narrow down what possible culprits may be driving the eyelid dermatitis for you. There are also prescription treatments that tackle atopic dermatitis. When you think about prescription treatments for eczema, probably what comes to mind is a topical steroid. Unfortunately, these are not always safe to use around the eyelids. Should be used very conservatively. There is a risk to damage to the eyes when using them there. There are some weaker forms that can be safely used for a limited time in that area. But then we have alternative medications that can safely be used in this area, like calcineurin inhibitors, otherwise known as Protopic, things like pimcrolimus cream, tacrolimus. We have a lot more newer eczema-specific reagents that can be applied to the skin to control the inflammation in the disease process, but without those risks that using steroid creams come with. So see your dermatologist. There are prescription treatments that are necessary. Now, when you are in the throes of an atopic dermatitis flare, especially around the eyelids, much of the time the approach in terms of skincare is not seeking out products, but rather bailing on products and going super bare bones and not really using anything. When it comes to eczema, typically a key aspect of eczema management is consistent use of moisturizers with ingredients like ceramides that can help replenish the lipids, which are deficient in people who have eczema, as well as hyaluronic acid, which can help with moisture retention. But sometimes you have to be careful in choosing these moisturizers when you are in the midst of an eczema flare. Not only can they burn and sting because you're a lot more sensitive, but they may have common allergens in them, and it may not be a good idea to put those things on your skin in the midst of an eczema flare. Now, petrolatum, petroleum jelly, can be a great option in this situation because it is a very low to no risk of allergy, and it actually helps protect the skin from irritating things getting in and from water loss. And so plain petrolatum, like Vaseline. There are other products on the market that have petrolatum and are sold as ointments that I have covered on this channel before. For example, Aquaphor CeraVe Healing Ointment. And a lot of times these end up working out great. However, they have multiple other ingredients, which for people in the midst of an eczema flare can actually possibly lead to the development of allergic contact dermatitis. So the safest option in this situation is actually plain petrolatum. It's a wonderful skin protectant, and it helps reduce water loss. As a side note, I want to point out something that YouTube now has. If you weren't aware, you may see in the corner a little bag icon. YouTube actually is using that. Anything that I mention in this video, if you want to learn more about, if you click on that little bag icon, it will show you that. It's not an affiliate link or anything like that, but yeah, it's definitely something cool. So if I mention something and you want to learn more about it, if you click on that little icon, it will show you what I'm talking about, provided it's available in the YouTube catalog. It's a newer feature, so it's not always 100%, but definitely look there if I mention something and you're wondering about it. Another tip is to just go bare bones and avoid eye makeup. A lot of eye makeup, while it's fine in general, not a risk to anyone's health, when you are in the midst of a flare of eyelid eczema, it can be incredibly irritating to the eyelids. Many eye shadows, for example, they have pigments that can be very irritating to eczema. So it's really just best to go no makeup. Some preservatives in eye makeup, while not harmful in general and actually helpful to keeping the product safe, they actually can end up being irritating to your skin. So really just going as bare bones as possible is key when you have a flare of that eyelid eczema, because remember, with eczema, it's a problem with the barrier function. Irritating things are more likely to get in, further flaring the breakdown of the barrier and further flaring symptoms, as well as putting you at risk for developing an allergy to those things and further driving irritation and inflammation that ultimately is going to make those Dennie-Morgan folds a lot more obvious. Say your eczema is under good control, maybe it's burnt out, it's no longer active, but you still have noticeable Dennie-Morgan folds. What can be done to improve the look of these? Honestly, I would still exercise caution in choosing a bunch of different eye creams because it could potentially be irritating to you, and ultimately that could trigger a flare of eczema, which you don't want. You know, there are a few cosmetic procedures that can be pursued to improve the look of the under eye area that will help lessen the appearance of the Dennie-Morgan folds. Certain cosmetic peels and lasers can be used to improve the texture under the eyes. See, Dennie-Morgan folds, they're not brought out by moving your eyes around. They're present at rest. So Botox really will not necessarily address those. Retinol eye creams may help to a certain extent because with long-term use, they can actually help improve collagen in the deeper layers of the skin. It's just going to improve the overall strength of the dermis and can help space fill and smooth out fine lines and wrinkles under the eyes. That may diminish the appearance of the Dennie-Morgan fold, but it probably won't completely erase it. And then humectants and moisturizing products, whether it be glycerin, hyaluronic acid, or certain peptides, attract moisture into the top layers of the skin especially. That can have a wrinkle smoothing effect as well. But I would really only consider those things if the eczema is under good control. I wouldn't go experimenting with skincare products if you are really suffering with bouts of flares of atopic dermatitis, because again, you have an issue with a skin barrier, irritating things are more likely to get in. Go as conservative as possible. Fewer products, fewer problems for people with atopic dermatitis. And definitely see your dermatologist because again, you may have developed an allergy to something, or we have newer medications now that are safer to use in this area. So don't think that you can manage it by yourself. It certainly can be related to the eczema that you had as a child kind of coming right back. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. Again, this is not really something that is talked about in the marketing around eye creams because mostly what eye creams that have anti-wrinkle ingredients, namely retinol, are focused on is wrinkles that are brought about as the result of the aging process. But a lot of you may have prominent under eye wrinkles that have nothing to do with aging. They have to do with atopic dermatitis. Comment below, let me know, have you ever heard of Dennie-Morgan's folds? I have gotten questions over the years to talk more about them, so I really hope this video was helpful to you. Now on the end slate, I'm going to link my recent video where I answer some of your questions about atopic dermatitis, so check that out if you missed it. But if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye!